coffee has traveled a long way to be a part of the Mama Java lineup. And today we are going to take this coffee bean all the way back to its homeland and share the story behind this bean. So we flew all the way to Kona, Hawaii to bring you the story of what makes the Kona coffee so special. This is such a beautiful area. We're up on kind of a mountainside, dropping away down to the ocean, and we're going to take a complete tour of the coffee farm here at Greenwell Farms. It is Thursday morning, and this is the morning that we are headed to the coffee farm. The main reason that brought us to Hawaii. Kona Coffee is pretty expensive coffee. It's a really special coffee, and today we're going to go take a tour and show you where the coffee bean originates from.
Kona Coffee Belt is a legally defined 35-mile long, 1.5 wide, 500 to 3,200 foot elevation strip of land, and if your coffee grows inside there, you can sell it as Kona Coffee. If it doesn't, you can't. But there's a little bit more to it because we are regulated by the state of Hawaii, and by state law, we have to comply with grading standards. What that means is you can't just grow junk coffee in Kona and still sell it as Kona Coffee. It has to comply with those standards, or you still can't sell it under that name, okay? The environment here is absolutely conducive to growing coffee trees. It mimics the highland regions of Ethiopia in rainfall, in volcanic ground, and I didn't use the word soil because let's say you're in Pennsylvania and put a shovel in the ground, you can keep going down. Here you're about 2 inches before you hit a rock, okay? But it just turns out that coffee is adapted to that, okay? It likes water, it doesn't like to sit in water. Now this is gonna sting, but at 10 in the morning, 330 days out of the year, the temperature here is 80 degrees plus or minus 5. Like 330 days out of the year, our mid-morning temperature hovers around 80. We have this thing we call winter, and it lasts for about 14 days every February. During that horrible, horrible time, we have to wake up to like 61 degrees, and it's, I know, we put on the space heaters and our down jackets, and some mornings we just can't get out of bed, but, and I appreciate the sympathy.
Pretty terrible.
Yeah, it is, right? But this is that mild, you know, coffee doesn't like temperatures below 50, and it doesn't like big shifts in temperature. So in the morning in Kona, it's typically blue 360, and as it moves towards lunchtime, it starts to cloud on the mountains, but it stays usually crisp and clear at the coast. And by evening, dry, gorgeous sunsets down there, and rain or mist up here. The reasons it's important to coffee is in coffee's ideal growing environment, it actually grows below tree canopy. And you've heard of shade grown and all that. So this thick afternoon cloud cover acts in the same way. It kind of diffuses the sunlight and lets the trees have a little respite from that intense tropical sun. So that's one, okay? The growing environment, absolutely conducive to coffee. 2, have you guys had a moment to stop at a roadside fruit stand or a farmer's market yet?
Not here,
okay.
Not yet.
If you can put it on your bucket list, I don't care what you buy. Oranges, grapefruits, avocados, bananas, papayas, lychee. It's just the beginning of lychee season now. You're gonna take a bite and go, OMG, that is the richest, sweetest, most complex, nuanced piece of fruit I've ever had. The fruit quality that comes out of the ground here is exceptional. It's a well-recognized thing, and so coffee is a fruit. And because of that, again, the advantages of Kona coffee farmers are A, good environment, B, exceptional fruit quality. But that's it. Now it's up to each individual operation to take it the rest of the way, right? And then add that roasting, of course.
Right.
The roasting is the chefing of that coffee. And so I put it that don't think about Kona coffee as a single cup profile. Think of it as a region that produces a very quality fruit, and then each operation has to take it the rest of the way. So it's a Napa Valley, it's a Champagne, France. It's a region that has the ability to make that nice fruit, and then each operation takes it to their vision. And that's truly what Kona Coffee is today.
Hey, Scott.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, how you doing?
Good morning, Matt's people.
Hello.
Have you ever heard of sleeping grass? Check this out. Come close. When you touch that leaf, it falls asleep. Isn't that crazy? Good night. Now it'll wake up in about 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Look at that.
Every kid in Hawaii plays with that when they're a kid. They just like lay on the grass and put it all to sleep and find another patch. Before smartphones, that's how we entertain ourselves.
Yeah.
That's much better. Xander, what's that called? What did he tell you that's called?
Sleeping grass.
Yeah?
Sleeping grass.
Touch the other two leaves right here.
Right here?
Yeah, wherever.
What makes it do that?
It is a defense against grazing, and there's actually thorns underneath, so when they sensitive plant or all those things. That's where our founder set up his shop in 1850. He was in San Francisco selling shovels and picks that he brought from Australia at the beginning of the gold rush. And when I say the beginning, not 1849, but 1848, like the real beginning. Because if you recall, there wasn't a transcontinental railroad or a Panama Canal yet, so it took forever for the east to move west, right? But the Pacific Ocean people had about 3 months of travel to get here. So he gets to San Francisco with 3,000 pounds of shovels and picks and pans and all that. And the sailors jump ship because they want to first come, first serve, get their claim, right? So he has to unload the ship by himself, and he's on a stretcher for like 2 months after that. And so he actually goes to Honolulu to convalesce. They didn't have doctors. You know, San Francisco in the 1850s had a population of 2,000 people, no electricity, no hospitals, no doctors. So he went to Honolulu because the Royals had a little hospital there. He takes employment at a general store. Now I want you to think about that like a trading post. They ask him to open one the next year. That's where we get the 1850. He comes to the Big Island. He opens their general store in downtown Kailua Kona, but he stumbles across this piece of property, and with the proceeds that he made in San Francisco, he realizes he can just buy it. It was like, I think the first purchase was 16 acres. And do you want to guess what he planted on his first 16 acres?
Any guess what he might have planted?
So the visiting ships, the whaling or merchant ships of the generation, they had issues with scurvy, not enough vitamin C. So he basically grew oranges and pumpkins. High in vitamin C, a guaranteed sale at the port, and that's what he began doing. He actually never grew.
First planted here.
So first trees in Kona in 1828. Kamehameha II took a trip to London. He actually got the measles there, and Hawaiians had no natural immunity to measles. So him and his wife died in England, yeah? But their nephew, who was the governor of Oahu, they had made a plan to bring coffee back to the islands as a possible cash crop. So on the return voyage, he stopped in Rio de Janeiro. He picked up 6 trees, planted them first in Oahu, where they didn't do very well. They're kind of, they didn't die, but they just weren't very good. And then they moved it over to Hilo, because Hilo's this big wet rainforest. Everything grows there except coffee. And it was like, yeah, it's kind of wet. We don't like the wind. They brought it to Kona. Literally, there's a church about 10 minutes south of where we're standing. And a priest by the name of Sam Ruggles took cuttings of the Hilo trees. No, he took the Oahu trees and he put them in the ground. And they said that every 4 months they doubled in size. They're like, we're here, we found this home. And like, and that was like this indication they had found this growing environment. And then from there, it's just this slow beginning. But we know historically from about 1866, Henry Greenwell, our founder, was using the term Kona Coffee, always on hand, available, typically sold as green bean. So people would roast their own coffee, right? It's not till a little bit later, late 1800s, where pre-roasted coffee became a new luxury. You didn't have to, do the beans yourself. So this is the cupping room, and every coffee farm has a place where the brain trust of the people guiding the flavor profiles work, and this is that space for us. I don't know if you've seen these before, but these are Q grader evaluation charts.
Okay.
The Q stands for quality, and it's specific to Arabica coffee. You go through about a 2-year or so training to pass a 2-week class. Part of that class is at the end they put a blindfold on you and they have a little box of oils, and they unscrew the cap and they wave it under your nose, and you have to be like, potato, green apple, blackberry. You have 5 seconds to ID it before they go on to the next one. Yeah, and it's tough. Now I'm in that class right now. I'm in my beginning of my second year to do this, and it's hard. My wife will sneak up behind me at the supermarket and say, close your eyes, and hold a piece of produce to my nose. I have to be like, it's cucumber. And she's always trying to trick me with walnuts and other weird things. But and it's like,
and your brain can be very it depends what your experience is or what you just had
what you had for lunch,
right.
Your mood, the perfume of the person standing next to you,
right.
All those things play in. And then add to this How many times in your life have you smelt a potato? I can't count, right? But you take the visual away and you're like, I know exactly what that is. However, I cannot access that information from my brain without a visual cue. And it's just like, that's why you have to go straight olfactory to that memory. But what I found, and it's surprising to me, is it's something you can learn. And it really becomes a vocabulary that you share with other coffee graders around the world. You see that flavor chart on the wall. You've probably seen those before. You know, I'll go to coffee expo events around the country, and when people say apricot, I know exactly what they mean. And one of the interesting things is they developed the first flavor wheel for the wine industry at UC Davis. Kansas State and Texas A&M adapted it to coffee. This is more of a Gen Z thing. I'm more Gen X. But until this year, when you evaluated coffee on the table, you looked for these boxes, you know, flavor, aroma, body, acidity, finish, linger, intensity of the balance between sweet, acidic, and bitter. It was only talking about what was on the table. In the younger generation, that's not enough. Where and how did it grow? What were the methods they used to grow it? How much did they pay the farmer? Did they come in and say, I'm going to steal your coffee and pay you a penny a pound? Or did they say, what do you need as a living wage so that you can afford it? And this is really the biggest emerging story in specialty coffee, and they call it extrinsic value. And it's just, there's something beyond the taste in the cup. And you've probably seen this in the roasting world with things like Black Rifle coffee. You know, it's military employees, they're focused on military families. That's that tribe bonding that they're using to move that coffee. There's you know, all sorts of iterations of that in the coffee world now, but it's beyond just what's in the cup. You know, it's I have a relationship with this farm, and it's probably your videos allude to that. I've been there, I've talked to them. You know, we're supporting these people. A lot of the smaller roasters will actually go to Panama and meet the family and talk to their kids and go, you know, we're sending them to school, and we bought some shoes, and we're doing this, and people are become part of that story. So that's kind of the next evolution that's just unfolding now. And then I just want to add to this that you know, no two entities use the same exact meaning when they say, you know, this is a medium roast, and you're like, okay, I think that means it's on the lighter side. But my wife and I in the last 20 years have bought probably 24 8-ounce whole bean medium roast from different Kona coffee farms, and we just get excited about trying it, and we're so blown away how our farm would call that a dark roast. Our farm would call that a light roast, and you know, this is way beyond anything, you know, and so it's really, you have to try before you buy. You have to have that, what is this? Because just reading information on the bag is not going to give you that accurate information. So yeah, roasting is complex that way. I was at a roasting competition in Oahu last year. Xander, you know what kind of flower this is?
No.
It's an orchid. And do you know how many kinds of orchids there are?
No.
Guess.
60?
More.
100?
More.
200?
More.
300?
Way more.
1,200?
Yeah. Over 40,000.
Are you serious?
Because you can hybridize all sorts of orchids together, and people have hobby continue to create them. Share with you a statistic. I don't know if you're going to do any swimming while you're here, but every year in Hawaii, they report somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 coconut-related injuries.
Are you serious?
They fall on people's heads, on their hands, through their car windshields. But when it comes to shark-related injuries, there's about 10 or less a year.
That's amazing. So coconuts are more.
Watch out for the coconuts.
Look at that, buddy. See him? You want one of those to fall on your head? No! No, that would hurt. Guys, these are 123-year-old coffee trees. And when I say 123, I'm really talking about the stump. This is a shoot of about a year. And coffee fruit is only going to form on branches up to, it doesn't form on year 1 branches. It forms on 2, 3, and 4 branches, and then it'll stop producing. So young or old, you're always trimming back your trees from the trunk. The trees of this age, these were planted in September of the year 1900. So if you look up on the tree, you'll see there's a little bit of coffee, but not a lot. If you're lucky, you're going to get 1 or 2 pounds of fruit.
And the younger trees I'm going to show you in a moment, they'll average 25 pounds of fruit for us. So it's not commercially viable, but our owner is the great grandson. He says, I'm just going to protect this as long as I can. And we actually mostly use this as seed stock. So we'll harvest the fruit, turn it into seed, and then use it to regrow the tree.
Okay,
so
interesting. So how old did you say?
123. They were planted in 1900, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Real bananas right there. See those guys? Those
Oh
are
yeah, we were
bananas.
looking for banana trees,
Oh, look
Xander.
at that.
Those
How
are
about they're not very
apple
good
bananas,
yet?
which are one of our favorite eating bananas here.
That's amazing. Do you think you could be like a little monkey and climb up?
Now it's not this one, that's a toddler, but here it is, little baby pineapple. Now your typical yellow pineapple is 2.5 years from crown to fruit, and each crown makes one pineapple once in its life forever.
Are you serious?
So when we harvest the pineapples, we have to take the whole plant out and replace it with we start them in pots, so you're not waiting 2.5 years or waiting 6 months, but
So it takes 2.5 years for one pineapple.
if I was to twist the crown off of this one and
Okay.
put it in a pot of dirt, from that moment it'd take 2.5 years to next pineapple. The green stuff, that's pepper. And when I say pepper, I'm talking about peppercorn.
Okay.
It's native to southern India, and it was once so valuable you could pay your taxes in it. These drupes, as they're called, this is a new one, produce small green round fruit. If you pick it green like that and dehydrate it, it becomes black peppercorn. If you let it stay on the vine longer, it turns red like a tomato. When you boil it, the outer skin falls off, and then you're going to dry your floaters. That's going to be white peppercorn. And in Southeast Asia, they pickle these. Now you see how these are starting to wilt? They're getting a little bit like wrinkly. That's because they broke the stem off and they actually self-dehydrate. So if I just let that sit on my kitchen counter, in about a week, I'm going to have black peppercorn.
Oh, interesting.
Would you guys like to taste it? It's actually a little bit spicy, but it has all sorts of complex flavors.
That's actually good.
For you.
Did you want a sip of water, Xander, or are you good?
So how many different varieties of food or like plants do you have here? Like food producing, like
Commercially, it's coffee, pepper, vanilla, and chocolate. But
okay.
yeah, I mean, pineapple, papaya, avocado, mango, lychee, tree tomatoes, banana peppers. We got everything.
That's
and
amazing.
It's just because the ground here is very fertile,
Okay.
and why not? You know,
Yeah.
like we're hungry.
For sure, it's amazing.
Go on this way.
So I am standing among the coffee trees here at Greenwell Farms, and this is a breathtaking property. There is so much biodiversity. They have mango trees, avocado trees, pineapples, just the list goes on and on. And the story behind the coffee here, how it got here, the methods why this is like the perfect climate to grow coffee. And I could just walk around here for hours. It is so pretty. I'm really spited. We came in the short week window where there's like no harvesting going on, but this is the time of year we could come with our family, so the coffee cherries aren't ripe. But yeah, this is just super fascinating. It's just lush, green, beautiful.
All right, guys, a brand new young coffee flower just forming right there. Coffee starts to flower in mid-December.
Okay.
It will have about 7 big farm-wide blooms to the following spring. We call that Kona snow. And then trees also have individual flowerings as well.
Okay.
Now, coffee is a self-pollinator. It's the wind. When you have a branch of open flowers, and you see how the branches shake in the wind, that light motion dislodges pollen to become fruit. And that's why when you look down the branch, you'll see there's small and medium and large, and they're all kind of right next to each other but at different sizes, because every fruit is ripening on its own time schedule. So that's why they don't all turn red at the same time, and you have to come in and pick the reds, come back 2 weeks later. But can you imagine how much more coffee is on this tree?
That
Oh, there's a couple more on those trees there.
starting to ripen.
To manage our arch enemy. There had to be an arch enemy, right? In our case, it's a little beetle. It's called the coffee berry borer. They will burrow into the fruit, hollow out the seed, have up to 5 generations of offspring in one coffee season for us.
Really?
Absolutely devastating. We were the last place on earth to get it. It probably entered Hawaii in 2006. By 2011, the Kona Coffee Belt reported 70% damaged coffee. That meant pinhole 1 or 2 or 3, chips, broken, partial hollow, full hollow. And I remember those days, people saying Kona coffee is done. There's just, one of the reasons they said that, And again, this is something I stress for people that are selling the coffee to end consumer is we are the only coffee industry on the planet Earth regulated by the USDA. What that means is chemical pesticides that are used in South America and Africa are illegal here. If you caught using them, heavy fines and possible imprisonment. So using the chemical protocol for that beetle was never an option in Hawaii. Never. It was banned from the beginning. So that's why most people say, well, there's no way forward if we can't use these poisons. University of Hawaii has a tropical agricultural extension program, and they came up with this following solution. We are an early adopter of it with 6 other farms. They said, first, you're going to grid your farm. So imagine the 180 acres we have. We made 3 to 4 acre blocks, okay? And where you can, you make light physical barriers between the blocks. 50% of those blocks are going to be like this, making coffee. The other 50% are going to be stumped down to the nub. Now they will grow back immediately. In a year, they'll be 10 feet high. But remember I told you coffee doesn't form on year 1 branches. So for 1 year, that tree will not make any fruit. Now what you've essentially done is you've starved out that beetle for a year. It has no home and no food. They can't travel far. That's why sometimes they'll come into, neighbor, have fence next door, things like that. But generally speaking, you can decimate their population down to around 0. Now in that second year, that's what you're looking at here, is second year, just about now, at the end of May, beginning of June, for about 2 months, they're going to come down the rows and they're going to mist an organic fungus known as bacillus over the trees, and it will settle down on the fruit, and that is a physical barrier that the beetle, if they try to cross it, will grow into their body, and about 40 hours later they're decomposing on the ground. Now it's organic, it washes off in the rain, it has no toxicity in the ground, and using that 2 method, 1 year off, second year protect the tree, we can keep their population about 2%. 98% of our coffee shows no bug damage whatsoever.
That's amazing.
I just tell people, don't lose this particular sub-context is we're in Hawaii. You may have noticed that Hawaiians have a very strong relationship with the earth itself, with the island itself. They believe the island is a living entity. They live in coexistence with it. And although it was never an option, knowing that we're not spraying the bees with these poisons and not, making the ground toxic over a several year cycle, it helps us sleep at night dramatically. So that's part of this, probably unspoken most of the time, but it flows through this for sure. It's another reason why you see so much biodiversity. I mean, I've been asked multiple times, how come you just do all coffee? Take out the mangoes, take out the lychees, you just go all. It's like, in Hawaii, biodiversity is highly prized. They just, all that fallen debris, makes different nutrient layers. It keeps the microbes active. It keeps your land vibrant, and that makes better coffee as far as we're concerned. Yeah, that certainly is a big topic in specialty coffee expos these days. Kona Coffee is hand-picked, 100% of it. And workers will have a basket on their waist, and they will pick only the red fruit, and they visit each tree every 2 weeks during a 3-month period. And that 3 months actually changes by elevation. So peak of harvest in Kona is September, October, November. But for us, we start picking coffee at the bottom of the property in July, and we don't finish picking the top of the property until mid-May. You're hand picking, so 90% of the time, you're getting the red fruit, right? But a small percentage of underripe, which is yellow to green, or overripe, which is brown to black, is gonna come off the tree. So we have to separate that out. But that green wooden box there, they load the coffee into it, it lifts it by an elevator, and it falls onto a high-speed treadmill belt in the middle of the machine there. There's a row of cameras, and these are called spectrographic cameras, so they're designed to read color. And basically coming off the belt, it wants to launch the coffee across a gap, and we want the red ones to jump the gap because that's going to take a conveyor belt to the other side of the building where we'll separate the skin from the seed. But if the cameras detect that underripe, overripe, these tanks hold compressed air, and a little puff of air will and knock it into the gap. So the rejected fruit come out this way. This is a spinning auger tube, and we'll fill those yellow buckets with the rejected fruit, and from there we'll compost it. And so it doesn't have any other value than returning the nutrients to the ground. But starting on the other side of the building, we're only dealing with that bright, shiny red coffee fruit. Because don't have any harvest right now, I looked hard for a cherry this morning. I couldn't find one, so I do apologize. But I want you to imagine a red cranberry-esque fruit. And in that fruit, there's typically 2 seeds, and they're covered with a gelatinous goo. That's the mucilage of the fruit. It's actually very sweet to the taste. So the first thing this machine does is it removes that outer red skin. It just rips it up and pushes it through a gap, and they separate out from there, okay? Is you got the same drum, they spin, they push the coffee against that plate, it squeezes the seed out. We'll usually park a trailer here that will fill with the skins, and then the seeds will go down to a bath of water for a light fermentation. They're going to soak for about, I want to say 20-ish hours, and then they're going to be rinsed. And at the end of that, you get what we call washed coffee seed. So that's that seed with the skin and the mucilage removed. Here's a simple rule. If you don't do anything to the fruit, it's natural process, or also called dry process. You just take the fruit, put them on ground tarps, dry them that way. It's a longer dry cycle. You do have some concern about molding, and you have a longer fermentation, which will also change the flavor. So a lot of the really fruity coffees that you come across tend to be natural process. Okay. If you take off the red skin but leave the mucilage on and dry it that way, it's referred to as honey processed.
Okay.
Now, honey process is typically done only in small batches because you can never absolutely recreate the exact ferment 2 times in a row.
Okay.
Ambient, naturally occurring yeast and what the weather was and what the temperature was will all change that. So in an operation like this, you'd end up wasting a lot of coffee because they can go horribly wrong, or they can actually be amazing. And coffee geeks like me, we sometimes get gooey about honey processed coffee because I'm drinking a coffee that no one has ever drunk before or will ever drink again, and it makes us feel, you know, really, really, really special. But so you have your natural, you have your honey. Now if you take off both, you take off the red skin and the mucilage, which is what we do here, it's called washed process, simply washing away those 2 layers, okay? Now, how strong are you, Xander? Do you have super strength? Maybe yes, maybe no. I want you to try something. Take a low side, put your hands there. We're gonna push that roof open. You ready? Go. What? Amazing. Now don't leave because you have to close it in a moment, but these roofs are called by a Japanese name, which is Hoshidana. That's because it was invented by Japanese immigrants in the early 1900s. And it's a roof on train wheels on a track. So when it was sunny, they'd roll it open and show their coffee to the sun. And when it was rainy, they'd roll it over to protect the coffee. It's way easier than trying to drag coffee on tarps into the garage when it rains, and the weather here changes so frequently that this is just a beautiful way to protect the coffee without having to physically move the coffee, right?
Oh, that's great.
They still use them today, but they use a combination system where they use the decks for a few days and then they finish the coffee in dryers. This is really that small modern twist. Now, okay, you know we're always marketed to, right? So if I looked you in the eye and said we sun dry our coffee on the slopes of the volcano in the center of the ocean, you know, oh my God, oh my God, that's amazing, right? But not true. And it's not true in that, you remember our coffee beans are hemispheric typically, and when you lay them out on a sun deck, you're not pancake flipping each seed on a time, but you're raking them. So some portion of your beans are going to spend more time flat side down, some more round side down, and they also lean and stack on each other. What that produces is an uneven dry. Now, meticulous Japanese farmers of old would rake through that coffee every 30 minutes. They're very careful about it, but even then, we're told that their moisture range at the end of dry was somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 16%. Now, that's kind of amazing. They did that with no tech, just being careful about it. But today, one of the state grading standards says at the end of this process, our moisture has to be between 10 and 12% every single time. That protects you as the buyer of that green bean in Kona, saying when I cook it, it's all gonna cook together rather than, you know, every bean cooking on its own timeline. So to do that, let me go introduce you to our propane dryers, okay? Come on down this way. Now these big red drums are the dryers, and there are trap doors built on the sun decks above. And when you lift the trap door, it's actually built right above these drops you see here. So they can take a push broom and they just sweep that coffee into the opening and it'll feed into the dryer hatch. These dryers do rotate. They start at 80 Fahrenheit and work up to 95. You never get above 95 because that's when things start to cook, and you don't want to cook, you want to dehydrate at this moment. When the coffee's done, they release it into a this well here, that's a scale, and they'll put these big bags on it, and they're going to fill these up to 1,000 pounds of dried coffee. That's what we call the parchment, and then they're going to rest it for about 2 months. Now this is not the visa program. That's called MTA. It is migrant agricultural labor. Our workers come from a single village in Michoacan, Mexico. They're all related to each other. They're all family. We have same faces up to 10 years in a row. And when I say they're very well cared for, it's true. And I don't say it only because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but we cannot do this without them. And I stress this to my groups every single tour is, why don't you hire Americans? You can't. They don't want to pick coffee all day. They're not out there. The kids that grew up on coffee farms typically want nothing to do with coffee. And you get paid by how much you pick. So if you're not good at it, you're not making money doing it. And so you really rely, and they don't have a technology that can individually take the red fruits. They basically shred the tree in mechanical harvesting. So to get the highest quality, freshest, ripest fruit off the tree, human fingers and eyeballs is the way it's done. And so we're very appreciative of our workers. They're very well cared for. And until there's a technology drone that shoots lasers at the fruit, which I don't see anytime soon, that's how we're going to do it. Yeah.
You want to scratch you? She said, I want some attention. I want some attention.
Maxie's a kitty.
Look at that.
She's purring.
Is she purring?
She's happy.
Usually cats will like jump on you and just scratch you. I don't like that.
After resting in that warehouse for 2 months, the 1,000-pound bags of dried coffee are taken here by forklift, and these guys are fed into a hulling machine. It's a rotating cylinder with little teeth inside, and it shaves off that outer skin that we call the parchment layer, and then we run it through size sorting. That is the State of Hawaii Department of Agriculture, and they take a random 1/3 sample of each pallet. They run tests on it. When they deem it's compliant with state laws, they stamp it, grade goes on the bottom, and now either it's going to go up to the roasting room where we started, and we're going to cook it for the gift shop or the website, or it's going to go out that door as green bean. That'll go to Oakland, California first, and our broker will sign contracts to send it out to potential roasters around the world.
This is the first time you saw a coffee farm. What do you think about it?
Awesome.
Awesome. What was your favorite part?
Seeing all the fruit.
It was really cool. Really cool. I had no idea that it's that intensive. Like, there's a lot of labor involved. It's a really small section of the island here that's actually, if you grow coffee within that section, it can be sold as Kona Coffee, but anything outside of that is, you can't.
So the combination of this being such a small area, plus everything that goes into the coffee, making it 100% Kona Coffee, is one of the reasons it's so expensive. The stuff we're gonna have at Mama Java is 100% Kona Coffee. A lot of times there'll be Kona names, like it'll have like Kona something or other, and it's 10% Kona Coffee and a lot of everything else, so that's what the majority is. So anyway, just a heads up, if you want 100% Kona Coffee, it's gonna be more expensive. A lot more expensive.